Welcome grade 12s to another segment of our Geography Paper 2. Now we'll be focusing on economic geography. Let's dive into it. Okay, you can clearly see on this first slide what economic geography is about. It has to do with money, trade, economic development, and the growth of our country as a whole. So topics that we'll be focusing on, of course, are the structures of the economy, agriculture. Particularly this year, we're focusing on beef, mining, which we'll be focusing on the coal, and then secondary and tertiary sectors, as well as the strategies for industrial development, which will probably be in my following segment. Okay, so if you're looking at these images, they are not here for decoration. This one is showing us a VW plant industry where we are, of course, manufacturing cars. This one is an example of an IDZ, which is in the Saldanha Bay in the Western Cape. And of course, here we can see your open cast mining, where they are extracting raw materials from the Earth's surface. As I've touched in the previous slide, we have four main sectors that we need to focus on. The primary sector, which deals with the extraction of raw materials, examples being your agriculture, mining, forestry, and fishing. The secondary sector, which is all about processing and manufacturing, so we are adding value to our raw materials. That's our manufacturing and construction. And then the tertiary sector, which provides services, goods and services. That's your service, trade market, trade, and transport. Then your quaternary sector, which is one that we don't really deal with on a day-to-day basis, is your high level of expertise and technology and information synthesis. That's where you have your scientific research as well as your information technology. Okay. Now, when we look at the contributions, the sector which contributes the least in terms of our employment is your quaternary. However, we always generally focus on the first three, and that it means that your primary sector is the one which contributes the least in employment as well as in your GDP. Why is this? It's because it's selling its goods as raw materials. Now we know from our grade 11 syllabus, when you sell something as a raw material, it's going to get processed and manufactured in another country, and then you're going to buy it at a higher cost, which is why it contributes the least. The secondary sector is the one which contributes the second highest, where we have your manufacturing and construction. Don't be confused about this electricity and water, because that tends to fall under your service. And then your tertiary sector contributes the most in terms of employment and GDP. Now, these statistics are not set in stone. They change from year to year, but more or less, this is the trend that we notice. Okay, so here's an example of a question that came out of your exams where you have multiple choice. The tertiary sector is also referred to as the informal service, health, or transport. It is your service sector. An example of an activity in the tertiary sector is mining. No, manufacturing is secondary. Foreign exchange, yes, and canning beans. So that is secondary, that was primary. So it's definitely C. There we go. Countries that are dominated by the tertiary sector reflect highly skilled labor force, poorly skilled labor force, efficient transport systems, and variety of mining activities. Okay, so the answer there is definitely I and 3, which gives us C. Good. The contractual arrangement between countries relating to their trade relationship is known as a trade agreement, balance of payment, trade strategy, or balance of trade. Trade agreement. It's bringing in some grade 11 content here, so it's important that you don't forget. 2.2.5. Goods that are exchanged within a country is known as international, regional, domestic, or provincial domestic trade. Okay, I always think about if you're at the airport and you're going to catch a flight, we say it's a domestic flight if you're flying within South Africa. But if, of course, you're going to go out of the country, we say it's international. The type of trade shown on the map, where you have your exports leaving Africa going to Europe and imports from the US coming into Africa. What type of trade is this? This, of course, is international because it's going across borders. That is D. The economic disadvantage of importing goods is what? Creation of local employment, production suffers locally, goods become cheaper, growth of local industry. It's definitely B. Okay, especially if it's a disadvantage. Nothing about these other options was a disadvantage. An advantage of South Africa having a favorable balance. Already my brain is telling me we have more exports than imports. Okay, so the benefit of having that. Foreign capital decreases, jobs are created, retrenchment of workers stimulates economic growth. 2 and 4 is D, and that is correct. Okay, you can see sometimes I work through the process of elimination, and that's how I get to the answer. Other times I look at, it says an advantage. If you are a negative, there's no way that it's going to be an advantage. Okay. And then we have our primary sector, which is farming, agriculture. We talk about our small-scale farmers and large-scale farmers. Very important that you know the difference. Small-scale farmers are your subsistence or your commercial farmers that are working on a small piece of land. They have low farming production and they contribute a small amount to the GDP. Hopefully we all remember what the GDP is. It's your gross domestic product, right? Which is made up of all the money that is generated within your country in a year. Your large-scale farmers are predominantly commercial, meaning they're farming with the purpose to sell. It's a high farming production and it contributes the most to GDP. Now, factors that favor and factors that hinder farming. High demand of products. The more demand there is, the greater the supply will be and the more money people will make. Fertile floodplains. You need fertile land to farm. High summer temperatures. Availability of labor, both skilled and unskilled. Research about techniques, improvement in agriculture, your GM seeds, genetically modified seeds. Irrigation systems, ports and airports for trade, especially if you want to make international trade. Okay. Then, factors hindering. So what are the problems that affect agriculture? Low rainfall. We know we need a lot of rain in order for crops to grow. Soil erosion. Natural disasters, such as droughts. Subsistence farming. Now, one would ask, why is subsistence farming a hindering factor? It's a hindering factor in the sense that it prohibits commercial farming, which contributes more to the GDP. Subsistence farming is all about farming to feed yourself and your family, and then a little bit you make a little bit of income. Pest decrease production, crime, HIV and AIDS, as well as veld fires. Your veld fires, which we associate, of course, with your berg winds, which we know occur a lot in winter. Then we look at the contribution. We already know that the primary sector contributes the least, or contributes very low, next to quaternary. It contributes 3.1 to the GDP. It produces food. It helps in the development of infrastructure because you're going to need roads to transport your goods. You're going to need dams in order to store water. So it's a lot of promotion in infrastructure. Employer of labor. A lot of people are employed in this sector, both skilled and unskilled. It supplies raw materials to industries, which they will then manufacture into value-added goods. It exports and earns foreign exchange. The main products that we are focusing on in terms of farming, particularly in the Southwestern Cape, we have your fruits, your deciduous, your subtropical citrus fruits. We have your grains, your livestock, beef, mutton, pork, predominantly in the Eastern Cape with your beef. Sugar, we find in KZN. And then we have your dairy. Okay. Now, food security. Now, food security can come with a 15-mark question, so you need to ensure you know this topic thoroughly. Food security, what does it mean? When all people have enough food to sustain a healthy lifestyle. So it's having the quantity, but it's also having the quality. Because there's no point in you having quality, having a lot of meal pap and rice and potato, and it's all just starch as your diet for your country. You need a variety of vegetables, of fruits, of protein, so that you can have a balanced diet. That's why we have a lot of African countries where people are suffering from kwashiorkor, which is a malnutrition, lack of or deficiency of vitamins. So that is what being food secure is. When you experience food insecurity, it's when not all the people have enough food to sustain a healthy lifestyle. What are the hindering factors? What is causing us to experience food insecurity? There's a lack of fertile land. Natural disasters such as droughts, poverty, food prices increase. People can't afford, especially with this economic climate that we're in. Climate change, decrease in rainfall, high temperatures, all of those have an impact on farming. Waste of food, land reform. Why? Because it's a lengthy process. It's taking too long. So land is being left barren without any agricultural activity happening, causing food insecurity. Population growth. People are consuming too much food than they can grow. And of course, subsistence farming, as we mentioned. Subsistence farming causes fragmentation of land. You can't perform commercial farming, which then, of course, decreases the yield that you produce. What measures can be done in order to combat this food insecurity? Sustainable agriculture. Find ways of promoting farming that is going to be generational. Don't overexploit the land to a point where you can't use it again. Use fertilizers, leave it fallow for some time. Crop rotation, use strategies. Prevent soil erosion. Best way is to ensure that you maintain vegetation to anchor the soil. Efficient ways of storing food. Reduce water wastage. Regulate food prices so that they are attainable. Support small-scale farmers. Good farming techniques. Drought management and urban food gardens. Okay. So here is our major agricultural product, which we are focusing on, that is beef. Beef, of course, is your cattle, from your cattle, from your cows. If we look at this South African map, the distribution of beef, according to this. So remember, you're going to get a question that is going to have an infographic. You use that particular infographic. You use those statistics that are there. You don't memorize these ones, but more or less you should know which provinces have the most cattle or farm the most. So we've got Mpumalanga at 21%, Free State at 19%, Gauteng at 17%, followed by KZN and Northwest, and then Eastern Cape. Okay. So this is the share of beef production per province, statistics of 2019 and 2020. What is beef farming? It is the breeding of cattle with the purpose to sell it as beef meat to a consumer. The meat from the beef is used by the consumer to feed themselves. Or you could be using it to make other products which are linked to your beef. Now, what or how is it beneficial to our economy? Because remember, we're doing economic geography. The gross value of beef produces 37 billion rand, meaning it adds to the export value of 2.5 billion. So it's a major contributor to our GDP. It produces 85% of locally consumed meat, meaning our local people, domestic people, buy this beef, which also increases our GDP. Farmers contribute tax. That tax is going to go into our economy, which is used to develop the country by providing police services, building hospitals, so the basic services. It develops infrastructure by expanding electricity network, road network, communication networks. You need infrastructure to develop if you want to trade in businesses, particularly if you are wanting to reach international markets. Employer of labor, 22.1 million people are employed, and it supplies raw materials to industries where they make beef products, which creates other jobs, e.g. your butcheries and your hide and leather industries. Okay, so there is a major contribution to the economy. You select the ones which are most memorable to you, the ones that you're going to remember. Factors favoring beef farming. Approximately 80% of SA's agriculture land is suitable for extensive grazing, meaning that there's a large vast of land where your beef can feed. High demand of beef products. Demand is more than production. So economics, you know, the higher the demand, and that will mean the more people will want to supply and the higher the price. Excellent research facilities to ensure cattle farmed is adapted to local weather and environmental conditions. So this is that sustainability concept. Ports and airports for export trade. And South Africa has highly developed transport and infrastructure that allows for transporting. These are certain aspects that attract investors to make this industry even grow more. So it could possibly even bring foreign exchange. Factors hindering beef. So what are the problems with this beef farming? Human settlements and others, such as mining, crop farming, forestry conservation, are increasingly reducing the grazing land. So remember we said approximately 80% of SA's agricultural land is suitable for grazing. However, that land is being utilized for other uses and thus restricting their grazing land. Drought and unreliable rainfall, which is an effect of climate change, that is a result of global warming. Diseases, your foot and mouth and ticks, where farmers will have to get rid of a bunch of their beef if they contract that foot and mouth disease. Soil erosion and overgrazing, natural disasters, droughts, floods, and forest fires, and then of course your crime, the theft of your livestock is still a major, major challenge. Here's a question focusing on the beef exports. So identify the 2 provinces that contribute the highest percentage. There are so many learners who made a mistake just because they were not careful. You just had to look at the percentages. So KwaZulu-Natal is sitting at 20%. The highest one here is, of course, Eastern Cape sitting at 24%. So that's how we got to Eastern Cape and KZN. State the general trend. The moment you see the word trend, we are looking at whether is it increasing or is it decreasing. So if we look at the trend of beef exports from 2019 to 2023, remember, look at the axes. Here we've got your beef in tons. There we have your years from 2019 until my pen now is maybe not C, 2023. Okay, so if we look up until 2023, we can see that there is a general decline. That is the word I'm looking for. Give evidence from the extract that in recent years, the South African beef industry was negatively influenced by a physical factor as well as an economic factor. So a disease, as much as it's not something you can touch, it's not tangible, there are still microbes and bacteria. It is a physical factor. So your disease and the foot and mouth, that is an example of the physical factor. And then for your economic factor, it's the increased operational cost. So that is located here in the text and here. How can small-scale beef farming contribute to household food security? Okay, small scale. Remember we said small-scale farming. It is farming that can be subsistence or it can be commercial, but you're generally farming on a small piece of land and you're not producing a lot of yield. In this case, you're not producing a lot of cows. So how can it assist in food security? Number 1, households will have access to beef. They will have food, protein that they will get from the beef. Increased production will make beef more accessible. If more people are having small-scale farming, meaning that it's more attainable, so it will be more accessible, meaning more people will have protein, even if they don't farm. Beef provides protein, as I've been mentioning. A variety of other products associated with beef can be produced, your biltong, your leathers, and so forth. Beef can be sold on a local market, bringing income. These 2 are focused on how you can generate revenue from beef farming that you can use to secure yourself to buy more food. And then beef will become more affordable and cheaper if there is a substantial supply. Remember, the less you have of something, the higher the demand, the higher the cost. Then, 2.3.5, why will a new beef export market positively affect countries' economy? A new market, meaning it doesn't exist originally in our country, so it must be coming from outside, will bring in foreign income. It creates a positive balance of trade where we're going to have more exports than imports. Increased foreign currency, value of exports will increase. Income from exports, very similar points. Contributes to the GDP, that's a different one. Boost foreign exchange, strengthening the currency. Increased contribution to the country's tax base that can be used to develop the country, both infrastructure, etc. Job creation. Increased earnings stimulate consumer spending. This is what we're going to link to that multiplier effect. Infrastructural development stimulate the secondary sector, and that is going to create more jobs, generates resources that finance industrialization. Okay. Then we look at mining. Under mining, our particular commodity we're focusing on is coal. You can see it there on the list. So when it comes to coal, mining in general, it contributes 9.5 to the GDP. Mining is still a primary activity. It provides many jobs. It harbors expanded. It supplies raw materials to industries that they then process. 50% of SA's foreign exchange. It stimulates other sectors, towns, and infrastructure developed. Remember, we use a lot of the mined steel and metals in order to ensure our infrastructure of our roads, of buildings, etc. The significance of mining. Diamonds and gold have been one of the major commodities that we've produced here in our country that have brought in a lot of foreign revenue. It's the driving force behind the development of SA. The city of gold, which is one of the most advanced and developed cities, is based because it was a town that had gold. Mining led to the opening of university, your Witwatersrand, your UJ, and educational institutes in order to study and find out ways to improve mining, engineering. Variety of minerals resulted in huge investments in SA, and it attracted immigrants. Then we look at the factors favoring and hindering mining. The first ones, SA has a wide range of minerals. We have a variety, which makes mining a very lucrative activity. Large mineral reserves, very large, and they are located nice and close to the surface. Low production costs as minerals are close to the surface. And if they're located close to the surface, that means that you will not have to adhere to those harsh temperatures and use heavy machinery to dig very deep. So it's also going to reduce in the costs. Benefits from foreign skilled miners. You have people coming in with their knowledge from different countries. Many countries invested money in our mines. Your De Beers, your diamond mines, Anglo-America, well-developed infrastructure in order to extract, transport, high quality of minerals, huge coal resource used to make electricity, which is one of the major issues that we have now. Factors hindering mining. The underground temperatures. As much as we don't have to go too deep, it's still very hot there and requires a lot of water to cool the machinery, so that's a hindering factor. High cost of training miners. Mine workers' strikes. Large distance between mines and harbors. Because if you look at our mines, they're there in Gauteng, which is a landlocked province. It has to go to Durban along the KZN coast or Richards Bay in order for them to be exported. Water shortages. Mining is a dangerous activity, so there has to be those security measures put in place by the owners. fluctuating prices of your minerals. Platinum can be the highest trading metal one day and then it plummets, so there's those fluctuations. Labor unrest and protest, large amounts of water, and then minerals are non-renewable accidents. Another factor that we can add now, of course, is it was our energy source. Energy source was unstable with the load shedding. So brackets, your load shedding. Okay, whenever there was load shedding, mining operation has to be put at a stop. Okay, so here we are focusing predominantly on coal, as I mentioned. You will notice that majority of our coal mines are located in this particular province, which is called Mpumalanga. And then we do still have some located in Limpopo, Free State, and a bit in Gauteng. But the majority of our coal deposits are in Mpumalanga. That's why we have Sasolburg located in Mpumalanga, which is close to the raw material, which is a raw material orientated industry. So coal is a fossil fuel that is burned for energy or heat, and it is formed when dead plant matter decays into peat over a million years. So that's why we say it's always formed from dead organic matter that has been compacted for millions and millions of years to form your coal. So that's why it's non-renewable, because it takes too long to form. It wouldn't reform in our lifetime. That's why we need to find strategies of finding other ways of energy provision, such as your renewable energy, your solar, your hydro, your wind turbines. What are the factors hindering coal mining? Negative environmental impact. As I mentioned, it is very bad for the environment because it releases your carbon dioxide, greenhouse gases that contribute to global warming, climate change, etc. And as South Africa, we've signed a Kyoto Protocol where we have agreed to decrease our greenhouse emissions in order to ensure sustainable development. Renewable energy sources are taking the place of fossil-based energy sources. So now there's going to be less of a demand for this. The proposed carbon tax. Carbon tax will be used to reduce competitiveness of South Africa's producers. So a carbon tax for people who are still using coal will make people reluctant to purchase it. Finances do not want to invest in coal power. Developments at Eskom have affected the sustainability and reliability of the supply, hence load shedding. The lack of rail and water infrastructure are a main challenge in the development of new coal. South Africa is said to be one of the 30th driest countries, so you can understand that we need to use our water sparingly. South Africa's water scarcity, there it is, means there is a lack of water infrastructure such as dams as well as canals, and mining competes with other sectors such as agriculture, manufacturing for land use. But the factors that favor coal mining: coal is the cheapest way to produce electricity. Cheap financially, however, it has a large environmental cost. Clean coal technologies have developed which will enable South Africa's move towards greener future. South Africa's coal regions are well known and well explored. There's a lot of knowledge about it. There's a lot of mapping of it, and geologists have done a lot of mapping of the coal seams. South Africa has a large coal reserve and resources. Companies invest heavily in innovation and skills training to build an even greater understanding of the resource base and how to mine it. And coal mining in SA is a well-established industry with technical skills. There's a history and a lot of knowledge there, which makes it that profitable. The contribution of coal mining to the economy. How does it feed into our GDP and make our economy grow? Provides employment, direct employment of 86,900 people, which gives us 24.7 billion rand that was paid in salaries. Employment is created through direct employment by mining companies and indirect through contractors and suppliers and services, because you need certain machinery and tools in order to work in the mines. Industry spent 56 billion procuring goods and services in 2018. Coal mining has a role to play in the development of human resources, training, skills, and then infrastructure, schools, colleges, clinics, housing. They give bursaries. Accounts for 94% of electricity generation via coal power plants, which is then used in industry, services, and all of the other avenues that we generate a revenue. Accounts for 50% of the volume of Transnet's rail and ports. Coal export earnings have a positive impact on the balance of payments. And then coal mining attracts foreign capital to the country and it provides bursaries. So there's a lot that we have gained from coal mining. Oh, economic geography. What a beaut. Okay, grade 12s, I'll check you again in my next segment. Thank you.